Have you ever wondered why God allowed angels to fall from heaven? Why would perfect, divine beings, created in light and power, choose rebellion and darkness? The Bible whispers of a forbidden story, one rarely spoken aloud, of a mysterious group called the Watchers. These angels descended to earth long before the flood, and what they did changed humanity forever. Some say they were divine guardians who failed. Others call them fallen messengers of corruption. But the truth is far more terrifying and instructive than most realize. This story is not just history, it's a mirror, a reflection of the dangers of pride, rebellion, and the allure of forbidden knowledge. Today, we reveal the secrets of the Watchers, the angels who defied heaven, and the legacy they left behind. Long before Noah's Ark, the earth was a vastly different place. Humanity had multiplied, yet wickedness already filled the hearts of men. The heavens were not silent. The sons of God watched over mankind, angels tasked with observing, guiding, and protecting. Genesis 6:1-4 describes a strange and chilling moment. When the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, they took wives for themselves, of all whom they chose. There were giants on the earth in those days, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. Who were these sons of God? The ancient Hebrew term Bene Elohim reveals that they were divine beings, not humans, but celestial watchers. Their role was to guard, not to interfere. Yet desire crept into their hearts. They looked upon human women and saw beauty. They felt longing, and that longing became disobedience. 200 of these angels, led by the mighty Semjaza, descended to Mount Hermon. They bound themselves with an oath, a pact of rebellion. Their mission would not merely defy God, it would reshape the course of history. Picture the heavens opening and angels of fire and brilliance stepping down upon the mountains of earth. To the ancient humans, they were gods, immense, radiant, terrifying, but their radiance hid their corruption. The Watchers did not come simply to unite with humans. They brought forbidden knowledge, metallurgy, the crafting of weapons and tools for war, sorcery, and enchantments, manipulation of nature and spirit, astrology, secrets of the stars and hidden influence, seduction and vanity, teaching humans how to lust and covet. Each lesson corrupted the purity of mankind. The world that had been simple and righteous became dangerous and chaotic. From this union came the Nephilim, giants with enormous strength and fierce intelligence. They devoured humans and consumed the earth's resources. The cries of the oppressed reached heaven itself. The Book of Enoch elaborates, they devoured mankind. They drank the blood of men. And the earth cried out to heaven for justice. Even animals became fierce, and nature itself seemed to rebel against mankind's growing corruption. The Watcher's gift of knowledge was a curse. With every secret revealed, mankind drifted further from the Creator. And the angels themselves, who once served God faithfully, were now trapped in rebellion, their brilliance darkened by pride and desire. God could not allow the corruption on earth to continue unchecked. The cries of humanity, mingled with the groans of creation itself, had reached the very throne of heaven. The blood of the innocent cried out, and the heavens trembled at the audacity of the fallen. In response, the Most High summoned his mightiest archangels, Michael, the commander of the heavenly armies, Gabriel, the messenger of divine revelation, Raphael, the healer and guide of both angel and man, and Uriel, the angel of wisdom, whose insight pierced the veil of time itself. Their mission was clear: to confront the Watchers, bring divine judgment, and restore the fragile balance of creation. But the Watchers, emboldened by pride and intoxicated by the beauty of the mortal world, resisted. They had tasted the pleasures of earth and the forbidden knowledge it offered, and their hearts had grown hard, defiant, and filled with arrogance. They knew of the power of heaven, Yet they believed themselves untouchable, immune to divine command. They were no longer mere watchers, they were tyrants, beings whose radiance had been eclipsed by their own rebellion. Michael descended first, his presence like a storm of divine fire. Each step he took scorched the air, leaving trails of burning light in his wake. He bore chains forged in heaven itself, luminous and unbreakable, designed to bind even the most powerful of angels. His voice thundered across the mountains, a command and a warning intertwined. Repent, sons of God, or face the judgment of the Most High. Raphael rose into the sky, calling the heavens to witness the rebellion below. His voice resonated like a chorus of 1,000 harps, carrying the weight of divine justice. He summoned the stars themselves, whose light illuminated the corruption on earth, revealing the hidden sins of the Watchers and their progeny. Every lie, every act of defiance shone as a mark against them, impossible to hide. Gabriel's voice shook the earth, reverberating through the mountains, forests, and valleys. His words were a judgment, a decree that echoed into the hearts of both angel and man. The time of lawlessness ends. The seed of corruption will be bound. The Nephilim shall fall, and you, fallen ones, shall answer to the Most High. The mountains trembled, the skies darkened, even the winds themselves seemed to pause in awe and terror. Uriel, the angel of wisdom, stood silent for a moment, his eyes piercing the very essence of the Watchers. He saw their motives, their desires, their regrets, and yet he also saw the inevitability of their fate. He revealed to them the full extent of God's judgment, a vision of the flood that would come, a cleansing of the earth, and the binding of their kind for eternity. No argument, no prideful plea, no cunning could undo what was decreed. One by one, the Watchers were confronted. The first, Semjaza, roared in defiance, but the chains of Michael bound him with a brilliance that seared his pride. Others fell into the grasp of Raphael. Their wings scorched and folded against their rebellion. Gabriel struck fear into their hearts, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. And Uriel, with the clarity of eternal wisdom, sealed their fate, showing them the abyss to which they would be cast. At last, the Watchers were captured, dragged into deep valleys, and hidden beneath towering mountains, chains binding them until the day of judgment. Their light, once radiant, was eclipsed by the shadow of their rebellion. Heaven had prevailed, but the echoes of their deeds would remain on earth. Yet even in their imprisonment, their influence could not be entirely erased. The Nephilim, the monstrous offspring of angel and human, roamed the lands for decades, leaving behind devastation, fear, and chaos. Entire civilizations were scarred by their presence. Fields burned, rivers were defiled. Humanity quaked beneath their might. The earth itself groaned under the weight of sin, and creation itself seemed to mourn the corruption that had touched its surface. Even in their darkness, the Watchers left a warning, a prophecy whispered to the generations that followed. It was not merely a tale of the past, it was a caution for the future. Pride corrupts, power seduces, and even the most radiant beings may fall if they turn from the path of obedience. The story of the Watchers endures as a testament of divine justice, the dangers of forbidden knowledge, and the eternal need for vigilance against the allure of rebellion. The earth had become a stage of unimaginable corruption. Every thought, every intention of humanity was evil continually. Violence had become the language of men. The Nephilim, towering giants born of divine rebellion and human temptation, roamed the lands, leaving destruction wherever they tread. Forests were scarred, rivers choked with the debris of battle, and the cries of the innocent filled the air like a symphony of sorrow. The planet itself seemed to shudder under the weight of sin. But in the midst of this chaos, God's mercy found one man, a beacon of righteousness amidst the darkness. His name was Noah. He walked with God, pure in heart, faithful in spirit. Where others turned to greed, lust, and violence, Noah chose obedience, and through him, God would preserve the hope of humanity, a lifeline untainted by the corruption of the fallen angels. Noah's task was monumental. The ark he was commanded to build was more than a vessel. It was a divine sanctuary, a covenant in wood and pitch against the wrath of heaven. Each beam he cut, each nail he hammered, carried the weight of God's promise and the gravity of impending judgment. Neighbors mocked him. Kings and warriors laughed. The winds of disbelief swept through the lands, yet Noah persisted, guided by the voice of God and the knowledge that the fate of creation rested in his hands. 40 days and 40 nights of rain would soon cleanse the earth. But before the deluge, Noah gathered the animals 2 by 2 into the ark, a sacred microcosm of life, fragile and precious. Birds of the sky, beasts of the land, creeping things, all were preserved according to God's decree. The air filled with the scent of rain yet to come, mingled with the earthy musk of animals awaiting salvation. As the first drops fell, the world shuddered. Rivers swelled beyond their banks, mountains began to drink the storm, and the valleys vanished beneath torrents of water. The flood had begun, an unstoppable torrent that would wash away corruption, cleanse the land, and restore divine order. The Nephilim, despite their might, were powerless against this judgment. They fought, they roared, they sought refuge in mountains and caves, yet the waters swallowed them. Their cries echoed across the plains, haunting the memory of mankind for generations to come. The earth wept, mourning the end of an age, yet rejoicing in the preservation of hope through Noah. Meanwhile, the watchers remained imprisoned beneath the mountains, their chains unbroken, their punishment eternal. Though bound, they could witness the consequences of their actions. The destruction of the world they had corrupted, and the survival of the one man who chose righteousness. Even in darkness they understood. Their rebellion had altered history, but it had not broken the covenant of God with humanity. After the waters receded, a new world emerged. The ark rested upon Mount Ararat, a symbol of God's mercy, his judgment, and the fragile promise of a second chance. Noah and his family stepped onto dry land, carrying the seed of humanity. Every step forward was a step into a cleansed earth, yet one still marked by the shadow of the past. The Nephilim were gone, the watchers bound, but the lesson endured. Sin carries consequences, and disobedience brings ruin. Yet, traces of the fallen lingered in whispers and legends. Civilizations that would rise afterward, Babylon, Egypt, Greece, carried echoes of their story. Giants, gods, mysterious knowledge, all reflections of the same truth, that once beings of heaven walked among men, and their choices left scars on creation itself. The flood was not merely destruction, it was purification, a reset ordained by divine justice. It demonstrated God's unwavering authority, his commitment to righteousness, and his willingness to preserve those who choose obedience over pride. But even as the earth healed, a warning remained. The rebellion of the Watchers and the corruption of the Nephilim were not mere stories of the past. They were a prophecy, a mirror of what can happen whenever pride, desire, and defiance of God's order take root. And just as in Noah's days, humanity must choose. Will we follow the path of obedience or repeat the mistakes of the past? Why does the story of the Watchers and the flood matter to us today? The warning is timeless. Jesus himself said in Matthew 24:37, "As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man." Consider this carefully. The corruption that engulfed the ancient world did not happen overnight. It began with small choices, curiosity turning into temptation, admiration turning into desire, guidance turning into disobedience. Today, the same forces are at work around us. Not giants of flesh, but giants of ideology, ambition, and pride infiltrate our world. Influential figures, unrestrained ambition and unchecked desire can spread like a modern Nephilim, subtly corrupting minds and hearts. Even knowledge itself, without humility, can become a weapon rather than a blessing. The Watchers serve as a mirror for all of creation. Their story is a warning of what happens when beings, even those of pure light, turn away from their Creator. When the divine chooses rebellion, the consequences ripple outward, touching every corner of the world. Similarly, when humanity prioritizes self over God, pleasure over wisdom, and ambition over obedience, we risk repeating the mistakes of those ancient days. Our society, our relationships, our communities, all are vulnerable to the same patterns of corruption. Yet amid this darkness, there is hope. Redemption is never out of reach. The Son of God came not to defy, but to redeem. Where the Watchers brought chaos and destruction, Christ brings restoration. Where they sowed rebellion, he plants seeds of faith, forgiveness, and reconciliation. Where darkness seemed eternal, his light provides guidance, illumination, and a path to righteousness. Their story challenges us profoundly to recognize the seductive power of pride, temptation, and unchecked desire, and to pause before acting. To discern between wisdom that leads to life and knowledge that leads to destruction. To choose obedience over defiance, humility over arrogance, and eternal truth over fleeting pleasure. Every day, each of us faces choices that echo the struggles of Noah's time. Will we allow ambition, greed, or unchecked curiosity to cloud our judgment? Or will we seek guidance, follow divine wisdom, and act in alignment with God's will? These decisions, though small, shape the trajectory of our lives and influence the world around us. The Watchers were powerful beings, yet their power did not save them from judgment. We too are given free will, power, and knowledge. But with these gifts comes responsibility. The difference between destruction and salvation often lies in the humility to submit to God's guidance and the courage to resist the allure of pride. Their story is more than history. It is a prophecy, a mirror, and a challenge. It reminds us that rebellion and corruption always carry consequences. Yet equally, that redemption, faith, and obedience are always available to those who choose them. The Watchers fell, yet humanity endured. The choice between obedience and rebellion remains as real today as it was in the days of Noah. The path of light and righteousness stands before each of us, waiting for us to take it. The shadow of temptation may loom large, yet the promise of redemption shines brighter. Ask yourself, will you follow the path of the Watchers, blinded by pride and ambition, seeking knowledge or power for selfish gain? Or will you walk in the light of God's truth, guided by humility, obedience, and faith? Will you let fleeting pleasures and worldly desires cloud your vision? Or will you embrace the wisdom that leads to life and salvation? Will you act in accordance with divine principles, or will you repeat the mistakes of those who fell before the flood? This story is more than a warning. It is a call to vigilance, a plea to guard your heart and mind. Share it, reflect on it, and teach it, because the lessons of the past are blueprints for navigating the present and the future. The choices we make today shape not only our destiny, but also the spiritual landscape of generations to come. Keep your heart awake, your spirit vigilant, and your eyes focused on the path of righteousness. Remember, what once was may come again, yet the light of God shines for all who choose to walk in it. Even in a world filled with temptation, corruption, and rebellion, hope endures. Faith remains, and the path of obedience and truth is always illuminated, waiting for those who have the courage to follow it. Let this story serve as both a warning and a source of inspiration. Let it remind you that redemption is always possible, that God's guidance is always near, and that even when the world seems overwhelmed by darkness, light will prevail for those who remain faithful.